Oh, and I'm still not done, because inside the box, bam, Thoroughbred Diesel sticker. So I figured I'd just start at Big Black just so I could show you the issues that we're having. VGT is actually stuck at 0.84, which is part of the issue that I'm having. When I rev it up, we do get some fluctuation, and it does want to break free, but I don't know if you can hear that. And sometimes it does settle out. So what I'll do is we'll exit out of there, and I'm going to go into the vehicle function, read codes, and you can see that's the issue. Don't worry about the P1000. That was just from a previous clear out. Come on, focus. That was just from a previous clear out. But the 0299, that's the issue right there that we need to get rid of. Amongst the other issue, which is the oil cooler, and I'll show you what that is. So the issue that I'm having here, you can see it's all nice and glossy, but that's just because I used a spray just to kind of clear things up or clean things up. But when you lift off the cover, you can see, yeah, milkshake. It's not hugely a problem because you can still see there is a division line on the degas bottle anyway, so we haven't like totally, I guess you want to say, destroyed the system. I've just been into this thing, and yeah, we're just going to take all of this apart again, replace the turbo. Now it's tear down time, back at it again. Even though I'm having these dumb issues with my truck, I have to say, in a way, the last oil cooler, my fault for wasting my money and not spending, you know, $400 on an oil cooler. We've got the airbox out, we got the cold air tube out. We also have the battery tray out, both batteries are taken out. The only reason why I'm taking my batteries out is you don't have to, but I have found just the more room that you get, the easier it's gonna be. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and attack this. I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna drain these fluids, whether I'm gonna drain, obviously I gotta drain the antifreeze down to a certain level just for now, because I do have to flush the entire system out anyway. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to back flush that into the radiator. So probably what I'll do is I'll disconnect it down right there, which is underneath the thermostat housing. Disconnect it there and let it drain into a container down below or something like that, or I don't know. I'll figure it out. I got to figure a way to not get that milk going through the system. Like I said, even though I'm going to have to flush the system out with Cascade anyway. Or actually, I'll probably end up using Simple Green. I've got a gallon of Simple Green and might just mix that up with some water and just flush it through the system with Cascade. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, it's just the process. Just make sure that, you know, you kind of clean up your parts as you go, I guess, right? So, but next, like I said, we're going to be taking that off. We're going to be taking this off right here, which is, you know, part of the intake tube going into the turbo. Turbo's out of here anyway because we got a nice one from Thoroughbred Diesel. So, but yeah, disconnect the alternator, disconnect the hot side tube right there, and yeah, it's just, I mean, it's quick but slow. So yeah, that's it. I don't know. Yeah. Here's the overflow. I don't know if you can see the milk in there. Got some milkshake in there. So that was my fix from years ago. It's just a valve stem nipple where the plastic piece broke off from the radiator. And yeah. And then bam, like I said, through the magic of YouTube, we've got some parts that have disappeared from off the truck, and they are actually sitting right here right now. So these are just pretty much the bolt off easy parts that you take off your 6.0 to get to the oil cooler, which is still buried down in there. I'm going to remove the wire loom kind of up and out of the way, use a bungee cord and just wrap it around and throw it onto the truck, either on the wipers or hook it onto the backside edge of the hood. That way it keeps that out of the way. Most of the time the clips that are on here are already broken, just like mine. If you've been there a few times, you kind of get it and understand why. But yeah, just, you know, keep things like this right here. This is a bungee cord that just kind of keeps the belt in place. It keeps it out of the way. The bolt that's right here that is not really under the alternator, but it's kind of like, you know, once you can get to it a lot easier once the alternator is gone. The bolts for the alternator, those are 13 millimeter. This right here is an 8. You got to take that, once you take that bolt out and pry it up, and then just throw your bolts and stuff right on the parts tray. Ford has, you know, plenty of parts trays. Got a parts tray right here. You got a parts tray both left and right side right there, so you can see the parts. Kind of keep them also in the area where you take them off. It kind of helps with reinstallation. The way the stuff is literally right there. Next, we're going to be going for the FICM. We obviously already took off the forward bolts, which is attached to that piece right there. You can see that metal bracket that's just like an intermediate tube, but the bracket's right there. And there's bolts on the back side of the FICM. We're going to be getting rid of those right there. And yeah, after that, then we'll go after the fuel filter. Pop those off. You can see I already got zip ties strategically placed. That way nothing gets lost. You got a zip tie down there. See that right there? Those zip ties have been on there for, I don't know, 7-8 years, something like that. So once they're there, that's all you need. We do have a little bit of a, you know, mess down here. That is to be expected. I was able to basically get all of the contents of the degas bottle without draining, you know, the system. Because what I didn't want is I didn't want it basically back flushing through the system. So I was able to get that, you know, all that garbage milkshake out of there. And I did put it in just a bottle. What I did is kind of just had a bottle sitting down in here where the air filter goes with a funnel. Funnel was up and under. And once I got this clamp off, which is the lower portion of the degas bottle, which is right here, right there, that piece right there. So once I pulled that clamp off, I had the bottle and the funnel ready to go right underneath. A little bit of a mess, but a little bit of simple green Cascade and some water, and it'll clean up nice. It's to be expected. Condition-wise, the only issue that this turbo was having currently was those vanes. But yeah, it'll be nice to throw on a brand new turbo and square that away. And like I said before, it's got a Wicked Wheel 2 in it from Thoroughbred Diesel, so yeah, it's going to work out. So we're going to go after those bolts on the back side of the FICM. Now, one of the other things too, don't complain. Yes, sometimes I call bolts nuts and nuts bolts. On the back side of the FICM, they're 8mm bolts. On the front side, they are 10mm nuts. So, yeah. I'm going to do a little pre-treat with Simple Green down there. I don't know if you can see all that down there, but just do like a little pre-treat and just kind of spray some stuff in there and keep it all nice and clean, right? Let it kind of soak in and do its job. So then the other thing while you're waiting around, or while you're taking off, you know, other parts, like, you know, we're taking off the FICM. So then one of the other things you want to do is you want to go ahead and grab yourself either some PB Blaster or some WD-40 right there. And while you've got, you know, kind of, I guess, the turbo exposed like it is, you want to go ahead and spray down your clamps and your bolts. Yeah, that's just a tip. So there's 3 bolts that hold the turbo onto the pedestal. You got one that's right, come on, right there. And then you got one way in the back in there somewhere. Can't see it right now. And you got another one on that side. So now we're just going to take those off. So now that we got the 3 turbo bolts out, obviously you can see there was one on the side there. Showed you the one that was in the corner there. There is one that's way in the back. You can actually feel it by wedging your hand in between the exhaust and underneath. Sometimes you can actually just take that tube off and it makes it easier to be able to get something in there. But now all we have to do is just kind of pry up on this exhaust tube, pull that away, and then the only clamp that's really a pain in the neck is that one. For some reason, this one usually gets jammed on. Just make sure that when you're using whatever you use, like say you take like a pry bar or whatever, you don't slip and jam your fingers into that. So, yeah. But anyways, so I'll just gonna leave the camera right here. So this time we're also gonna be a little bit proactive. and I took that previously fixed nipple out, which goes right there for the map sensor. So this time when the turbo slides out, it's not going to be snapping off the nipple. There you go. So this clamp's already off, or loose, whatever. You want to make it so that it goes down onto the actual turbo itself. And this one's the easier. This one just comes off like nothing. Once everything's disconnected, it's pretty easy. Hello. What's happening?
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Did you hit your hand?
Oh yeah.
Did you see it?
Nope. It's all covered with a Band-Aid and all that stuff right now anyway, so it's just stuff that happens. Huh? Oh, it hurt. But I will live. It's just mechanics. It's the fun part.
It's a weird idea of fun you got there.
Yeah. Good times. It seems like it's gonna rain, huh?
Yep, it seems like it's gonna storm to me actually. I thought I heard a rumble of thunder when I first got home.
So that clamp right there is just giving me a pain, so I'm just gonna mess with it. Cord is holding up the serpentine belt. That's just Sam asking questions. So now I'll be able to kind of rustle the turbo out, just like that. Boom. And there we go. Turbo's out. There's the hole that it was in. So just a little bit of a tip when you're going after the fuel regulator filter housing. Make sure you use backup wrenches on the inside and use those zip ties like I said, but also use paper towel and put paper towel under each fitting so that you can collect any lost fuel that's obviously going to drip out of the of that bowl. And then a certain obviousness is you've got two of these bushing type washers. It's just like a banjo bolt style, just so the inside one is kind of going to want to hang in there, and if you put a paper towel or whatever underneath there, not only is it going to catch any dripping fuel, but it will also help cradle that little spacer, washer, seal, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, but yeah, use backup wrenches so that you're not tweaking anything. But now what we're going to do is loosen up the driver's side feed, fuel feed rail, or fuel rail feed, whatever the hell you want to call it. Then on the front side of the intake, right, you've got the little fuel rail, I guess, support line right there going over to the passenger side. That's a 10 millimeter right there. Focus. Right there. 10 mil. And then on the inside of the shroud, right there, and then basically on the other side, kind of in the same location, you can kind of see there's a little poke out from the plastic shroud, and it contacts the intake on that front side, and that's a 15 mil. So you got two 15 mils and a 10 mil that's on the front side of that intake manifold, and you want to go ahead and take those out. You can see we've got the bracket already bent right there. That's all set. This little bad boy right there, that's all bent up. I put a paper towel in the oil return line just because I don't want any junk getting in there, and now all we got to do is just make sure that we're all set, and then go after all these little bolts right here. Remove the oil cap. You can go ahead and you can just use 1 7/16 inches. Just let it sit and drain for a few minutes. You can pull it out, put it in like a tray or whatever with some paper towel, just to kind of keep things, you know, nice and clean. Just gonna go after the 4 T40s. You got one right there, one there kind of hidden, another one right there, and then right there next to the sensor right there, and that's a T40. Right there. Now for the intake, you got obviously driver's side, passenger side, right? You've got 8 bolts to actually attach to the head itself on both sides, but then on the passenger side you have 2 extra bolts accounting for 10 on that one side, because that's actually what's connected to what normally would be the EGR cooler, which this has a delete, so there's no EGR cooler, but you can see that right there. So you can loosen those bolts up all the way first. That'll release that EGR bypass cooler, whatever you want to call it. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on that side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on that side. And then just make sure that you crack them all free. You don't have to do some crazy pattern. I mean, if you want to stagger, you know, the pattern, just don't crank them all the way out. Just break each one free, take your time, and just do it right. So, but we're going to take those out now. So intake's out, very easy. Bolts are left in. What you can do is you can make a pattern with cardboard if you want to pull the bolts out, and you just basically just put all the bolts in the cardboard pattern, and that's probably what I'll end up doing once I go reinstall the intake, because it'll be a lot easier without bolts poking through to go ahead and reinstall this carburetor. To go ahead and reinstall this intake. But we cleaned up all the little ports, and then go ahead and just throw some tape over it just so that, yeah, nothing gets in there. So now what we're going to do, take some more paper towels or rags, and we're going to kind of build like a dam or a channel along the back side of the actual oil cooler housing, because once we break this free, it's going to want to leak oil everywhere just because of the nature of the thing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go after the bolts on the cover, and there's a total of 10 of those, and those are a 10 millimeter. Before you do that, make sure you kind of clean in that channel. If you have access to a blowgun or some way to really clean in those channels, that'd be a great idea right now. And then obviously having those intakes nice and taped up, it just makes it a little bit safer when you blow in sand and debris, because sand and stuff does get up on this upper tray or upper portion of the engine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the paper towels or rags and then stuff them in there and create kind of like a dam in order to collect the oil that's going to spill. We get the oil cooler out and draining into this pan. Did stick it in there just for now. You can see there's a mix of the antifreeze and oil. But what we want to do is we want to just go ahead and start taking this thing apart. And that's going to be a combination of T30 and T40 bits. Obviously, it's pretty obvious. T40, T30. So, but they're all around the cover. And what we're going to do is we're just going to start separating things and see what we can see. So we got the covers off. It's essentially 2 covers. It's the actual oil filter cap cover itself, and then the actual it's a cover that's for the coolant side. I don't know why that cover is like that. They should redesign it a different way or something. But anyways, you can see right there, mixing with the oils obviously being injected through the cooler into the coolant side of the actual cooler itself. Because we're not seeing any contamination on the oil side, it's obviously all on the coolant side, which is right there. So yeah, so those 2 ports right there, you get a port that's right there and another port right there, that's where the oil circulates, and then right there and right there, that's where the coolant circulates through the oil cooler. Everything else is actually looking pretty good. So now what we got to do is remove those 2 bolts which are underneath one of the top covers, and they're 13s, and then the same thing on the back side here. You've got 2 more hiding underneath, one right there, both 13s. And yes, those are 2 nuts and 2 bolts. Now it's kind of hard to see. If I put the camera just like that, if that's the printing that you have on your brand new oil cooler, return it. Now just grab yourself a couple blocks of wood just so you can prop up the oil cooler housing on it and allow the actual oil cooler to go free. Grab like a socket or something that you can stick inside these holes right here. You either want to be the same diameter as that, or you want to be able to stick it in. That just pops right in, and just give it a couple of whacks. Do it even. Go one side, next side. You can see it just pops out. Done. get a look at the other side. Everything looks good in here. No issues with O-rings. Let's just check out the cooler itself. Obviously do it on cardboard too, because it is going to leak a little bit. Well, I'm not seeing anything obvious other than it failed. So another thing too is you might want to hang on to this. I don't know if the kit I've got comes with a new one. Hopefully it does, but if not, don't toss it. Now we're just going to go ahead and drain that in the pan and clean this cover up, put all new gaskets in there, and reinstall the oil cooler. The new one. Just use a pick and pick out all the gaskets. So you can see on the inside of the cover right there, you've got 3 to pick out, and then you obviously have the external cover that keeps all the oil inside of the oil cooler area. And then on the oil filter, you've got also this one right here you've got to pick out, and then when you look on the back side, you've got a nice little funky one to pick out there and right there. So 2 on the back side of here, 1 on the front side right there, then on, where's the other pieces? Then on here, you've got another one right here you got to pick out, and that's for this piece. Yeah, so good to go. Here are all your gaskets installed. You got the 2 on the inside or back side of the cover. You got the small one right there. Now don't confuse this one with that one. This one is actually slightly bigger, and then that one goes on there. Don't forget this one. This one now can just be pushed right into place like that. Make sure nothing is twisted. Make sure everything is seated well all the way around. You don't want to see the gasket rolling, especially on these long runs. You got these gaskets on, these O-rings right here are on. Put the top one on first, then roll over the bottom one. Same thing on that side. You got this gasket right here on this piece for the recirculation. You got this gasket that's the underside of where the oil filter goes. You got that little funky looking gasket shape right there. And obviously, like I was saying, the large one that goes there. Now the only thing you have to do is install the new screen. And in order to do that, you've got to drain the oil that's sitting right there in that location. And that's where the oil cooler itself settles into. So you got to remove that oil right there. So you just got to figure out how you're going to do that. I'm just going to use a cup and then, you know, paper towels and whatever to scoop up whatever else the cup couldn't get. And then I'll see that screen. Now actually, we can check that screen. Now this truck has been running since February, I think, on that oil cooler. So, was it February? Jeez, I don't even know. So what we'll do is we'll be able to see the condition of that screen and see if our oil was clean. So then right here what I do is I take a smear of grease and go all around both of these ports for the coolant on those O-rings so that it slides into those little channels, you know, just that much easier, whatever helps, right? So we got those bolts torqued down right here, 1, 2. That's the, well, bolts, nuts. We got those torqued down, and then don't forget to install and torque down those 2 that are on the inside of the cover. Now we're going to go ahead and install the oil filter housing. What's amazing is what the old screen is still catching. Now granted, some of it's, you know, sludge from the oil and whatever mix, but yeah, new screen, old screen. It is the updated one, but yeah, man, inside of my truck is nasty. New screen's installed. Just make sure you blow out all the holes for when you mount the cover back in. Just took a razor blade and kind of scraped the area nice and carefully, making sure that I, you know, pushed everything away from this hole, and I did lay in a paper towel in there. So just make sure you blow out these holes with an air gun or whatever, just so that you don't get a false torque reading when you do bolt these up, because if you get oil in there, it's not going to work. Now I'm just going to drop the cooler into place. Go ahead and grab your 10 bolts. Just drop them in. Grab your 10mm socket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run these in by hand first just to locate the cover. So I know that the cover is just slightly askew right now. I'm just going to go for the 4 corners. And that will pretty much align it to where it needs to be. And then the way I like to do this is having the gloves on is actually a pretty good idea. Now I'm just going to go to every bolt because I've already kind of snugged it down. But what's nice about these gloves, right, is that it sticks to the actual extension. So when you're running this in, I'm only using 1/4 inch because that's all you need. You're kind of almost giving an even torque as you go, and that's kind of how you want to treat this. So now put on your ratchet. And what I'm doing is I'm just tweaking these down to just touch tight. Because obviously as you go, you're tightening up the cover. The cover is moving just ever so slightly with that gasket. Now I can feel more resistance now. Then just go all the way around a couple times. That's pretty much it. They all have about the same amount of torque tension on them right now. Good to go. Here we're going to go ahead and take off the head covers, valve covers, whatever people want to call them. You got 12mm bolts, and then obviously you want to take off your Fickum bracket, which your Fickum bracket is 10mm bolts. And that's going to be 2 each for the Fickum bracket. And then you can see you got one right there, 1, 2. That one should come out with the bracket. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 on the bottom, total of 10. And also a 10 for the sensor right here. And also the dipstick tube. Forgot to mention that one. And this is a classic example right here of a failing dummy plug, or a failed one. So you can see the O-ring right at the tip there. It's junk. So, and that's a 10 mil. Passenger side cover off. Now we're going after that dummy plug right there. So we're going to pull that out and see what the condition of that one is. There we go. So there's our issue. Focus. How about some light? That work? Yeah. Come on, focus on it. See right there? See how it's all worn out? So that was our leak down issue for this side. And I want to say, honestly, 9 times out of 10, those back ones, you don't have problems with those. So I'm just leaving it as is. So I can already tell what the issue is. It's right there. I mean, look at that. Thing is wasted. Go ahead and kind of just lube it up before you put it in, and installation, it's a 12 mil. Going right in there. Just coat the new one with some fresh oil. And we'll install that. There we go. They're all set now. So now what we did is took out the intake gaskets, or O-rings, whatever the heck you want to call them. Lined them up on both sides, made sure that I had the position correctly. I did clean up the intake a little bit. This was some steel wool and blew out everything, all the ports, and made sure everything was nice. And now we're just going to go ahead and throw that in. I just got my little my bolt pattern thing, and I'm just going to start popping them out and putting them into place. Just locate just a couple. So I'll do that one right there so I can locate the gasket. Yeah. Okay, I'll be in. Thank you. I'll be in a just a couple seconds. There we go. We still got 2 left, and that's for the EGR EGR cooler that is deleted. So, but these are bolts just kind of settled into place. Yeah, so now it's time to go have some steak. EGR cooler bypass is installed. I actually ended up shortening the hose a little bit. Sinister Diesel actually does have a brand new one coming out to me, which is awesome. And what's nuts is I bought that thing in 2012 and they're warrantying it, so nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and torque up, or at least snug down, the intake bolts. Intake bolts are all torqued down. Now I'm going to go ahead and reattach the automatic transmission dipstick, which is focus right there. And then after I tighten that down, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the glow plug module. Hey Matt, what do you think? After 7 years, 8 years of this bolt being, what's that, 3 inches too long? Maybe it's time to cut it. So you can see the brand new turbo is obviously missing its Ford 6.0 heat shield, which is on the old one. So what we're going to do is we're going to just crack those 3 bolts, 8mm, transfer the plate. Actually, I think we'll clean it up first, but yeah, transfer the plate onto that, or heat shield onto that, and then it's time to install the new turbo. Heat shield's back on, nice and clean. Banged out some of the dents from the 7 or 8 installations that this turbo or the other turbo has gone through, in and out of Big Black. You know, becoming a better mechanic. See, I've always said, Fords, it's not fix or repair daily, it's making better mechanics. So Ford makes a better mechanic. 2 things to help with getting this turbo in, and one is a way just to obviously be able to keep that clamp in position kind of up here, because usually what happens is it ends up sliding down from shifting the outlet tube back and forth, and the one that doesn't move is that one right there. So the other thing that we need to do is, before we put the turbo in, is we do want to start laying in some of the wires, because trying to go ahead and get that wire right there after the turbo is in, yeah, that's not going to happen. And then I've got this block of wood here that's just basically wedged into the back side of the Y pipe, and you can see it's resting, the main outlet pipe is resting right on that. So it's just a baluster. So let's get some of that wiring in. Alright, now it's time to see if we can get the turbo back into its hole without wrecking anything. I think it's in place right now. Actually looks pretty good. Took a little bit of finagling. You can see what I do is I take a wedge. It's just a baluster, and you put it up against the Y pipe towards the back of the firewall, and it gives it enough pressure to go ahead and tighten up that clamp, because that clamp that's right there, the brown, that's the clamp that gives you the hardest time. And where are we here? So right in there, that clamp right there, that's the one that usually leaks. If you don't get the Y pipe connected to that intake port of the turbo, that's when you'll end up with in-cab smell. And now you can go ahead and work on that side. So keeping the cover on is a good idea too when you're doing this. So now you can see that that clamp is all set, and now is what I do is now I go after the turbo bolts. So yeah, so let's just get those 3 on. You got one here, one on the opposite side, and then one right there. That's actually a good shot of it. So right there. And then the other one is over here somewhere. Right there. Oil filter housing and fuel bowl filter housing too. 4 bolts, T40s, torque down. Now what we're going to do is just reconnect the left and right fuel rails, the return line, and the feed. Now it's time to give things a once over. Make sure you've got all your wiring routed correctly. A lot of times what will happen is you'll see wear patterns or sit patterns or curve patterns to how all this wiring is going. So now what we're going to do is we're going to install the FICM. Make sure that that ground wire right there, make sure that's installed. Make sure those bolts are torqued down or tightened. And then on the back side of the FICM, this plate goes on top. So just make sure you place that on there. Now we're going to install the intermediate pipe that has the FICM bracket, or at least the top part of the FICM bracket attached to it. And that hole right there is actually for that wire. So make sure that that wire is actually coming up and over, and you want to put that bracket so that it slides up and underneath, and then obviously this section of the tube is connected on that part of the turbo. So at this time, now that we've got the intermediate pipe on, pretty much going to be ready. We're going to be ready to put on the airbox and the cold side intake tube from the intercooler. So now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and put the radiator top hose that goes to the thermostat. Next we're going to install the cold charge pipe that actually goes from cold side outlet of the intercooler and then right into the intake horn, or whatever you want to call that. Make sure you orient your clamps the right way. And one tip on installing any of the boots, whether if it's cold side or hot side for the turbo and or the intercooler, just make sure that those boots and or the connections are free of grease, oil, whatever. Just spray it down, wipe it off, and just that way you're not going to have any pop-offs or blow-offs. You still might. Just make sure you keep wrenches or sockets, whatever you use, to go ahead and tighten these things down, because you may have doing a couple of test runs, you may end up popping off a tube. It does happen. So yeah, let's get that thing in. Make sure that when you do put the clamps on, orientate them so that the screw portion or nut and bolt area, just make sure that you orient it away from the radiator. Otherwise you'll interfere with the with actually the way this tube is designed. You can see it's got a flat side right there, and that flat side, it's made so that you can actually have these clamps and access them from that side. So just a little tip. Next we're going to reinstall the battery box, and it's incorporated the airbox or filter portion is incorporated, and that's what the airbox or the air filter sits down and into. So we'll go ahead and get that installed. Pro tip. These are just dryer sheets, and because I have mice that like to visit my truck, I don't want them eating the wires. So before I put the battery tray in or battery box, I'm going to place a couple of these underneath so that it deters mice and whatever else from wanting to destroy my wiring. Battery box and or tray is in. You've got 2 bolts right there, and these are 13, I think. 13 millimeter. Then you've got 2 underneath here, 1 there, 1 there, and then this is just my layer of extra dryer sheet. You can see I've got the dryer sheet padding in there. The mice actually like to make a little home right there and right in there, so hopefully that's going to prevent them from wanting to eat my wires in my truck. So you figure, what is it, like $5 for a box of dryer sheets? So not only can you have your clothes smelling Pine Mountain or springtime fresh, now the engine compartment can too. Now that we've got the battery box and or tray, air filter cradle, which is attached to the battery box, now we're going to go ahead and unwrap that portion of the turbo and install the back side of the air filter box, and then we'll connect up the 2 sensors that are associated with that. Now the front half of the air box is going to be installed. That's actually where It protrudes through the core support or radiator support. Then there's this tiny little tube that also feeds through a hole. So the large hole that you see right there is where that goes. There's a spot in between the intercooler, and then there's a small, another little hole somewhere in there. But that piece is next. It is pretty much obvious which side the airbox or air filter goes in. Make sure that that side is obviously facing the turbo or the back side of the air filter, you know, arrangement, meaning that piece right there. And then there's also a little notch right there which coincides with this, so you kind of really can't get it wrong, but anyways, there you go. Now that we've got the forward and aft piece of the airbox assembly installed, now we can go ahead and actually install the filter itself. Just for the sake of not losing these clips, I had taken these clips off. There's 4 clips, 2 per side, and that way I knew where the clips or clamps were going to be. So now we can go ahead and install. We've already got the front side on. Now we can go ahead and install the back side and then throw these clamps on. Install the sensor or the connection or the connector onto your air filter restrict whatever sensor meter thingamajigger. We'll reset that now, and then on the airflow sensor. And then for now, after we installed the clips and our sensors, and make sure that you put the wire loom connector on that intermediate or backside airflow or air filter box. Now we can go ahead and install the degas bottle, and you have to make sure that you put this connection underneath. This is all just common sense stuff that obviously connects onto there, and then obviously, you know, you got a couple of hoses that connect. But yeah, let's get that going. Make sure you take your wire loom, disconnect it from your wiper blade, and then you're going to want to wrap it underneath before you put in your degas bottle. Now, because we've got a new turbo, I am going to prime, or at least pump it with oil, so that we can get some oil on those bearings. And right now I'm just using a 0W20. It doesn't matter what you use, just don't use like gear lube or anything like that. But I'm just going to pump some oil in there, and yeah, we're getting close. Now we're just going to install the oil feed line. I pre-lubed up the O-ring, brand new gasket, all set. Now we can uncover the port, and we've already primed the turbo. This is the updated oil feed tube. So oil feed line is installed, torque down right there, right next to the connector. That's 8mm down there. 2 10s up top here. Don't forget your gasket. Now I'm going to install my heater core little valve hose. I did flush out the system. We are going to have to flush out with Cascade. Then I'll reinstall the map sensor hose, which is right here. And looks like it's still in fair condition. So, and then we'll make sure that we install the little vacuum pull line on this little solenoid or valve for the heater core. So we've got the vacuum hose connected, we got the clamps on, the heater core hose along with that valve right there, and then we've got the map sensor hose connected with it clamped down. Now we're just going to reinstall the alternator. We'll connect the plug into the alternator first, then mount it, and then we'll connect up our positive cable to it. And it's 3 mounting bolts, 13 mil. Now we can reinstall our serpentine belt. Making sure we're still good on our pulleys underneath. And you can pretty much just wrestle it on. Just like that right there. Good to go. I can install the hot side of the intercooler pipe from the turbo. And do yourself a favor, make sure you clean it. And for mine, I end up double clamping mine on the turbo side. I've had it pop off a couple of times. Just make sure you have sockets, wrenches, whatever for a couple of days after you give it some test runs, because you may get a blow off. Now here's the part number for the MOTORCRAFT oil filter. It's the one that correctly fits the cap and or the housing. And yeah, so we've got both the passenger side, driver side battery in. We got it on the charger, 10 amps, just to kind of balance charge since they've been out of the truck. And now what I'm going to do is fill it up with my Simple Green, Cascade, and water. And then change the oil. And then prime the system by, or at least the oil system. So I'm going to prime the oil by disconnecting this starter wire right here and just connecting it right onto the positive terminal that's right there. And then it'll crank over the engine without firing it up. Then it'll be technically a cold start on a hot day. It's looking good. Big Black hasn't looked this clean in years. Nothing but the best for Big Black. So we'll get the MOTORCRAFT oil filter and Mobile Delvac 1300 Super 15W40. We are a little bit high on the dipstick on, you know, the range where it says min max. And that's kind of where I want it to be, because obviously nothing's filled. So the oil cooler's not filled. We haven't got any circulation to the engine. So yeah, we just drain the oil, brand new filter, brand new oil. Now let's just pop off that little starter plug wire and do some clicking. Just gonna uncover the positive terminal here. Unplug the little starter wire. And then give it some cranks. Give it a change. So we're going to leave it off for now, let it kind of drain down, and then we'll do the same thing again. And I'm pretty sure, so that was you could definitely hear a massive difference doing that than the other time that I did it in one of the other videos. Big difference on when we did it this time. You could actually hear, you know, the pulse or the repetitious noise, and then you can hear basically the oil being pumped throughout the whole entire system. So I mean, we are damn close to firing up Big Black. New turbo, new oil cooler, fresh oil, fresh Cascade, water, and Simple Green mix just to flush out the system. I'll be running that for a couple of days. I got to be careful with it, but yeah. I think the only thing that we might need at some point is maybe a new belt. The belt doesn't look bad, it's just, it's looking kind of brown, like the clamps for the turbo. So, but yeah, we'll just wait a couple more minutes. Like I said, let things kind of just drain back down, and then do that again and see if we hear a difference in the engine. Alright, so we just checked the dipstick, and where it was obviously at that full position, now it's actually down to nothing. So we're going to put a little bit more oil in there and then give it some more cranks. Probably add about a quart, I'd say. Now I'll check it now. So now we're just touching the dipstick, or the tip of it. So what I'll do is I'll end up emptying whatever's left in here. Now we're registering halfway on the stick. Gonna go ahead and attach the starter wire again, and let's see if we hear a difference. Now that's the sound you want to hear. A consistent, repetitious, even sound. So, yeah. So now all we got to do is just throw some of my sweet mix into the cooling system so that we can do, you know, periodic flushings. And what I'm going to end up doing, right, is I've got some paint strainers, and I'm going to paint strain all the oil contaminants out of the coolant that I've got, and then I'm just going to add my simple green to that, and then maybe we'll do a cascade, kind of like little additive. So right now what I'm going to do is key on, key off a couple of times. And I'll probably pop the cap to the fuel filter just to see if we're getting any filling.
Was it supposed to turn over?
Yeah, but it wasn't supposed to start. Not yet.
Okay.
But I'm getting ready. So right now what I want to do is just want to crack the fuel filter open. Just to see if we're getting anything in there. There is fuel in there. So let's give it another little key on, key off. Oh, yeah, there we go. We got plenty. Gonna do the honors.
I'm turning it on?
Yeah, you're gonna be the one that's gonna start the truck.
Okay.
Excited? Actually, you know what? Let's clear out the stuff. All I gotta do is just plug in the starter wire. Is the key off? Okay. All right. Good to go. Go ahead. So it's running. Coolant's mixing. You can see there's a little bit of a line of oil right there skimming the top. Looks like it's like a 64th of an inch, which is fine. I really did my best to kind of flush out the system. But here's what the, wow, you can definitely hear a difference with that turbo. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to let it just warm up, and I'll probably add a little bit more coolant to it. But what do you think? Woohoo! So yeah, it lives. So obviously, like I said, check for oil leaks and all that stuff. I'm fairly confident there's going to be any oil leaks, but it is sounding nice. That sounds good. It's warmed up enough where I think I can give you a little goose. actually got to play that back so I can hear what it sounds like. Take it for a little ride right now. Here's the gauges. Focus. That is right where that turbo should be sitting at. Well, I've got the... I'm sweating bullets because it's like 90 degrees out. And I'm going to have the heat on right now so that the heater core is open and everything is like just flowing through the whole system. So let's take it for a quick little run. So I can actually hear and feel the difference right away. So what I'm saying, right, is to understand where the actual pedal is versus, I guess they call it that seat of the pants feel, and I'm not even doing anything yet. And I can feel a marked difference. Seeing where those numbers are right now, that's great. With the truck being unplugged for so long, I also want the truck to kind of like relearn itself. Man, just the sound of that thing is... Oh my God, that sounds awesome. Holy crap. So right now, engine coolant temp 190 and engine oil 189.3. Man, I'm not even putting my foot into the pedal at all, and I can just feel it. Oh my God. See that right there? What's that? It's a smile. I feel like my face is gonna rip off with how much of a smile I've got right now. I mean, again, it's been years. What do we got? Oh, low fuel. Nice. Hey, actually, you know what? Let's go get some fuel. Here's my wallet. I gotta go back to the house and get my wallet. So we're back. And all I can say is literally, Big Black has not been this happy in years. Oh my God. I am just pumped, man. Oh my goodness. So I have to say it. Once again, thanks to my wife. Because in reality, I mean, yes, I did the mechanical work, but she's the one that bought the stuff that I needed for Big Black, and I am so grateful for that. So, honey, thank you so very much. I love you. So, on this episode of What's Up Guy Garage, yes! So far, Big Black is feeling mint. Even more than mint. Ah, see that smile? Like I said, I'm smiling so much, it's like my face is just gonna rip off. I just love it. I'm telling you, man, look at this thing. Look at this truck. This thing is a thing of beauty. And something else that I didn't notice before, so when the headlights are off, the regular headlamps, they actually do like this cool like little flick, and they like alternate. And I think that's actually pretty cool. Oh my God. I don't know. Just a feeling. Thanks for watching this episode of What's Up Guy Garage. Hope you enjoyed this little adventure. And there's more to come because we still got stuff to do to Big Black. We still have to, you know, flush out the system, you know, the radiator. Because we should still see... It's actually not bad in there. So once I drive it a few more times, you can actually see maybe just a hint of some oily residue. All that's going to be out of here. And man, look at how clean this thing looks. The inside of this truck just looks like new. Holy crap. Big Black is back. This is her routine in the morning now. She obviously got it right in the nose. Oh yeah, she got the stream right in the nose. Did you get it right in the nose? You did, didn't you? It just literally feels so wrong that I'm not seeing a check engine light. Nice. Thanks for watching. Oh yeah, subscribe. Why wouldn't you?